Hi, I'm Jim Norris with Norris & Company. In today's episode of Takeaway Tuesdays for the Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to discuss direct marketing. As a full-service advertising agency, we usually recommend that our clients employ a multifaceted marketing approach. And almost every program we oversee has some direct marketing component. In fact, it's hard for me to imagine a business that wouldn't derive some benefit from direct marketing. But just what are we talking about? Basically, anything that takes your message directly to your potential customers is direct marketing. Technically, I guess it is a form of advertising, but for the most part, when we use the term advertising, we are talking about some third-party media delivering your message for you, be it radio, TV, newspapers, trade magazines, etc. But with direct marketing, we eliminate that third party and we take the message directly to the audience ourselves. And as a general rule, when we're talking about direct marketing, we are either talking about direct mail or email marketing. Now, I think at this point, most of us recognize the value of email marketing. Without exception, every one of our clients has some sort of an email blast program. Some do it in-house, but many ask us to develop and manage the programs for them. I'm sure many of you are using email too. If not, I recommend you subscribe to some third-party creation and distribution tool. There's a lot of them out there, and most are very inexpensive and easy to use. But I think traditional direct mail may be less well understood, especially for some of the younger members of our audience. So for now, I'd like to put email marketing aside and use this time to focus on traditional direct mail. Messages sent from us directly to our prospects via the US mail or maybe even UPS or FedEx. Okay, let's start by discussing what constitutes a direct mail piece. Well, that can depend on the company, the product, or even the market. It can take the form of a personalized letter or a form letter that is mailed in an envelope. It could be a sales catalog or a promotional flyer, either in an envelope or done as a self-mailer. It could be flat, folded, or tabbed. Or it could be even something as simple as an oversized postcard. This one is 6 inches by 9 inches. But they can be as small as 3 by 5 or as big as 9 by 12. And there are other forms of direct mail too. Maybe a sample, a specialty item with the company's logo on it, or some novelty that is packed in a box and shipped via some priority service. Now that we've described what direct mail is, let's take a minute and discuss a few of the big advantages that I see with direct mail. Firstly, it can be more cost-effective than other forms of communication. Radio, TV, trade publications, etc. Especially if your audience is well-defined and not too big. How big is too big, you ask? Well, I can't give you a number here, but you can figure it out for yourself based on a number of costs. Let's say you're trying to decide if you're better off running an ad in a magazine or sending out a piece of direct mail. Start with the cost of the ads. Suppose it's $3,000. Now look at the cost of direct mail. For this illustration, we'll assume you have an inventory of flyers that you could use, so the cost of printing and production is zero. Now let's say that a local mailing house has given you a quote of 12 cents per piece to inkjet and mail the flyer for you. And based on the composition and geography of your list, they determined that the postal rate per piece is 28 cents. So the total cost in the mail is 40 cents per piece. Now it becomes a simple math problem. 3,000 divided by 40 cents is 7,500. So if your mailing list is 7,500 names or less, there is an economic argument that can be made for choosing direct mail. Depending on how much less than 7,500 your list is, the argument gets even stronger. Now there are other factors to consider, and we could make the math much more complicated if we take into account the magazine circulation and how it compares to the size of your list. If it's about the same or smaller, then direct mail becomes very attractive. If it's significantly greater and you believe it contains readers who you want to reach but don't have them in your database, then your best bet might be to run the ad. Hopefully this little illustration will make you better equipped to make that judgment for yourself. The next thing we like about direct mail is that it is discreet. Why would I want my marketing to be discreet, you ask? Well, there's a couple of reasons, and both have to do with your competitors. With other types of advertising, your message is broadcast to a large audience, and in addition to the many prospects that may see it, it is almost a 100% certainty that your competitors will see it too. But with direct mail, you have control of your audience because you have control of the mailing list. That means you can engage in a significant communications program with your prospects and your competitors won't even know you're doing it. And that gives you a real competitive advantage. It allows you to deliver your sales proposition without fear that a competitor will challenge or rebut it. It also allows you to make very specific claims to your audience that you might not be as comfortable making in front of your competitors. Another advantage of direct mail is its ability to deliver a more comprehensive message. An ad, even a large one, does not typically afford us the ability to make a complete pitch to our audience. Direct mail usually gives us much more page real estate to work with. It allows us to communicate as much info as we need to. Now let's talk about direct mail's ability to help with recognition, image, and branding. You could argue that it isn't quite as effective as an ad program, but it is significantly more effective than email. And I believe the reason is because there is an inherent value on things that are tangible. A well-designed, professionally printed brochure, flyer, or even postcard creates the perception that a company is either bigger, more successful, or better qualified than others to solve customer problems. Now, I've had people tell me that this is nonsense and it's just my opinion. And while I bristle at the nonsense comment, I will agree that it is my opinion. But then I demonstrate to them that it's their opinion too. I ask them a simple question. I say, if you had the opportunity to have your business featured in an article in a print magazine that is distributed to 10,000 people or a digital magazine that is distributed to 10,000 people, which would you prefer? They figure out pretty quickly what I'm trying to do, and most of them hem and haw a bit, but eventually they come to the honest conclusion that they would rather be featured in print. Most can't or won't tell me why, but I just told you why. There's an inherent value in something that is tangible. Now let's deal with some of the concerns you might have, like the effectiveness of your message and getting lost in the shuffle. More than a few years ago, when people started gravitating to email and away from direct mail programs, many marketers would justify the transition by complaining about direct mail response rates. They'd often bemoan the fact that even good direct mail programs only generated a 1 to 2% response rate. That's people who identified themselves as wanting more information. And they thought they could do better with email. I confess we may have been a little guilty of this too, and we quickly embraced email. But a few years ago, after we had quite a bit of history to look at, we went back and we did some analysis. We looked at a broad sampling of email campaigns that we had done for our clients, campaigns that the clients deemed as quite successful at the time. We saw high delivery rates of 95% plus, and we were happy. We saw open rates of 20 to 25%, and we were happy. And finally, we saw what experts said were above average to very good click-through rates, and we were really happy about that. These above average click-through rates were about 1.7%. We compared this to direct mail response rates, the ones I mentioned earlier, the 1 to 2%, and based on the similarity of the numbers, we concluded that email was just as good or better than direct mail. But then a funny thing happened. One of our account executives shot a big hole in that conclusion. He pointed out that the 1.7% of people who clicked through to our clients' websites were anonymous, and he reminded us that the vast majority of them would remain anonymous. So yes, they fit the description of respondents, but they were not leads, they were just clicks. By comparison, the 1 to 2% of people who responded to traditional direct mail did so in a way which revealed their identity to us. They were real leads. They had names and contact info, so they had real value. They could be followed up, nurtured, and eventually sold something. Now, the lesson here is not to abandon an email program. It's just an attempt to provide a better method of comparison. Now, one of the other big reasons that direct mail fell out of favor with a lot of companies over the past several years was that there was just too much of it. Marketers believed that due to the high volumes of mail most people got, their message was likely to get lost in the shuffle. It was a logical conclusion. In fact, up until about 7 or 8 years ago, we got 2 mail tubs delivered to our office every day, of which about half was addressed to me personally. Today, the postman fits all of our mail in a little wooden inbox in the lobby of our building. and after it's sorted, I usually end up with just 4 or 5 pieces to go through. Now, by comparison, I usually arrive every morning to about 100 unread emails, and then receive another 50 or 60 or so over the course of a day. So I ask you, does shifting away from direct mail to email still make sense? Think about it. If you get 100 to 150 unsolicited emails every day, but only a handful of letters, catalogs, or postcards, which has the greater chance of being noticed and ultimately read? Direct mail has a few other things going for it too. Consider oversized postcards like this one. One of the things I really like about them is that the message is right in your face. It's almost impossible not to read it before you decide whether or not to keep it or throw it out. Obviously, we'd prefer that you read it and keep it, or maybe even pass it along to someone in your organization. But we're not all that upset if you throw it out after reading it. We got our chance to deliver our message, and hopefully we've improved our name recognition and enhanced our image with the readers, and those are both good things. Then there's the staying power of direct mail. Again, we think it has something to do with the tangibility factor. Imagine someone quickly going through their mail. Maybe they're even doing it over a wastebasket. They throw out what they don't need, but if they see something that they think might be of value to them, even if they don't have a current need for it, they might keep it. They file it away somewhere, or if they're like me, they add it to the pile on the corner of their desk. Then, at some future date, they pull it out and make contact with the sender. So, if after hearing all of this you think direct mail might be right for you, you're probably wondering how to do it. Well, here are a few tips. Start with a list. Hopefully you've got some sort of contact database that you can pull from. Start by getting names there. If you don't have that, then start with your customer lists. If you can go back 3 or 4 years, that's even better. It's not uncommon that my clients' customers buy something one year and then don't buy anything from them again for a few more years. So stay in touch with them and maybe you'll get an opportunity to sell them something else. If you find that early direct mail results are positive, you can then begin efforts to supplement your list. Look in directories, do web searches. If you exhibit at conferences or trade shows, see if attendee lists are available. Oftentimes they're included as part of your exhibitor package. Next, figure out your messaging. You may already have a brochure or a flyer, and because of the economies of scale inherent in offset printing, you probably bought far more than you actually needed because it only cost a little bit more. If that's the case, use what you've got already. It will allow you to test the waters with a small investment. If it works, then you'll feel more comfortable about designing and printing new material. Third, and this is an important one, get help with the mailing. Now, if your list is very small, you can probably do it yourself. But the bigger the list gets, the better the argument for working with a mailing house gets. They'll do the job faster and more professionally than you can. And because they understand postal regulations, they will usually get you a significantly reduced postal rate versus using a stamp or your own postage meter and first-class postage. We often choose standard pre-sort postage because it's cheaper than first class, but items still deliver with relative speed. Having said that, if your mailing list or database is older and hasn't been used in a few years or maybe even decades, you might want to consider doing your first direct mail piece using first class postage. It'll cost you a bit more, but because it's first class, any undeliverables will be returned to you, so you can update them or remove them from your mailing list. Your list will get smaller, but that's okay. You'll save on future mailing costs and postage, and you won't be wasting materials. Finally, stay with it. If you spent any time with me, you've probably heard me say, it's a process. You'll never actually get it done. But for most marketing activities, it's true. Marketing is like pushing a rock up a hill. You could stop for a while, but you're still going to exert a lot of effort just to keep it where it is. And when you do decide to start pushing again, it's going to take even more effort to get it rolling. So commit to a program and stick with it. There's no substitute for repetition and consistency. It builds recognition, awareness, and even credibility. I hope this episode of Takeaway Tuesday has shed some new light on the potential for direct mail to help your business. I'd like to thank the Plymouth Area Chamber of Commerce for inviting me to speak with you today, and I'd like to thank you for joining me. Until next time, I'm Jim Norris.